Good evening. I'll now call the regular Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, September 19th, 2023 to order, and I will ask the clerk to please call the roll. Deputy City Clerk Sheila Ernst.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Chair Klein, we have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you.
Commissioners Wilkerson? Yes. Courtney? Vargas?
Here.
Lightfoot?
Here.
Banta?
Here.
Vice Chair Rudin?
Here.
Chair Klein.
Here. Everyone, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will ask Commissioner Lightfoot to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Okay, we'll move on to approval of this evening's agenda. If there are no changes, do I have a motion and then a second to approve the agenda? Moved by Vice Chair Rudin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lightfoot. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioners Wilkerson, Courtney,
Yes.
Vargas,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Vanta,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rudin,
Yes.
Chair Klein.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Our next item is communications. Director Morse, do we have any communications?
After the packet was published, there was one supplemental memo pertaining to the Dutch Bros site. The commission received that directly, and it was posted on our website before the meeting, and that's the only communication.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to approval of this. Oh, okay, we just did that. All right, so our next item is business from the floor. This portion of the agenda is available for the public to address the Planning Commission on any issue that is not on the agenda this evening. To please approach the podium. So if anybody would like to speak on any item not on the agenda, I would invite you at this time to approach the podium and share your concerns with us or your praise.
Good evening. Sorry, it's always that first hello. I'm Tonya Espinosa. I live in North Village. I'm here to express my disappointment for the very first planning commission that I attended was to vote for North Village Phase 2. I was ill prepared because I had only found out 2 hours before exactly what the verbiage was in the notification from our planning department. It was very sugar-coated, nothing to raise concern or alarm. So when people showed up to speak about it, I feel it was your duty to take a step back, hear us out, and realize maybe the community is not being notified in the manner that we should be. Therefore, we're not aware of actually what's going on. My question to you is one on the notification and having people show up should have been something to raise concern. How does a 20-year extension benefit existing residents? That should have been a question you asked. Or how does it actually address the housing crisis today? Because waiting 20 years at 70 homes a year is not going to address our housing crisis. And recently I've heard statements regarding a community meeting we had regarding the battery storage facility of this is the greatest turnout we've had from our community. It goes back to the public being notified and with proper manner of exactly what's going on. So I ask you tonight to do your due diligence when it comes to big development projects that are going to affect the community, to ask how does this benefit the community as a whole and directly affect the residents, not just we need to address one portion of it and it's going to suffice to that. If you can do that and regain our trust in you, the community would greatly appreciate it, because right now there's a negative view against our planning commission or decisions being made that affect us and we feel ignored and left out. So I hope that we can move forward in a positive light and work together to make better decisions. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Espinoza. Other members of the public wish to address the commission during business from the floor. close public comment, and we'll move on to the consent agenda, item 6. We have one item on the consent, which is the minutes from the August 15, 2023 meeting. Does anyone from the commission or the public wish to pull the consent item for discussion? Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the consent calendar is approved. Our next item is public hearing on Dutch Bros. This is item number 7. We'll move into the public hearing portion of our agenda. And that is the Dutch Bros and multi-tenant commercial building at 1251 Alamo Drive.
I'll vote for the,
Before we get to that, before we get to the public hearing, we'll revisit the approval of the agenda. So if there are no changes, do I have a motion and then a second?
Motion made.
Moved by Commissioner Fortney. Is there a second? Second. Second by Vice Chair Rudin. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioners Wilkerson? Yes. Fortney? Yes. Vargas?
Yes.
Lightfoot?
Yes.
Vanta? Yes. Vice Chair Rudin? Yes. Chair Klein?
Yes.
Passes.
Excellent. Now that we have an approved agenda, we will take on, we'll return to public item, the public hearing, item number 7. After commissioners disclose any ex parte communications, we will receive a presentation from staff followed by commissioner questions, and then we will open it up for public comment. Does anyone wish to disclose any ex parte communications?
I do.
Vice Chair Rudin?
I spoke with the applicant about the project.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rudin. Commissioner Wilkerson?
I do. I also spoke with the applicant. Nothing learned.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilkerson. Any other items of ex parte or commissioners wish to disclose? Commissioner Fortney?
Yes, I had conversations with the applicant and the applicant's engineer.
Commissioner Fortney? We have 3 ex parte disclosures. Anything else? Anyone else wish to disclose? Okay. So, all right. I've had no I have nothing to disclose also. I've had no communications, so there's that. Anyway, we'll move on to the staff report. May you please have the presentation.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. This is the Dutch Bros and the multi-tenant building presentation for Planning Commission. So this item, they're proposing to construct a 950 square foot Dutch Bros drive-through facility at an approximately 5,000 square foot multi-tenant building that will be located at 1251 Alamo Street. On the right of the screen, you could see an overlay of what the proposed site plan will look like over the current aerial imagery of the site. As you can see, it will be taking access off of Alamo Street. There's an existing multi-tenant building, a commercial building over onto next to the multi-tenant and Dutch Bros building, and then there's also existing multifamily and residential over onto the on the other sides of the property. So from the maps, you can kind of see where the general plan designation and the zoning designation is for these sites. They are both designated commercial office. Both in the general plan and the zoning, it allows for a floor area ratio of 0.3. The proposed plans show that the floor area ratio is going to be 0.09, so it is meeting city standards. So to summarize the application, or the summary of the application, they have applied for a categorical exemption through CEQA, a conditional use permit, and a design review. The conditional use permit is for the drive-through, which is conditionally allowed within the commercial office zoning designation. The site is 1.41 acres. The proposed two buildings. They're going to be just under 6,000 square feet in total. The Dutch Bros is 950 square feet. The multi-tenant is just under 5,000. They're proposing 59 parking stalls. Like I said, the access is going to be along Alamo. They're preserving 33 trees that are existing on the site. They are removing 2. And then from this project, they comply with standards as conditioned. On the screen here is the elevations for the Dutch Bros building. So they're using stone veneer, corrugated steel, and on the left side, you can see what will be viewed from the Alamo Street. And then on the right, that is going to be what you'll be seeing when you enter the parking lot from that elevation. Also, these colors are the standard for their corporate. On the screen here is the multi-tenant building. On the top is the front elevation. They have a potential of having up to 5 tenant spaces. And the materials that are on here are stone veneer, stucco, and horizontal lap siding. And then in the rear of the property line, you can also see that some of the metal trellises that are on the site. For the landscape plan, this depicts kind of where the parking stalls are located, as well as where the trash enclosures are going to be located, which is going to be towards the rear of the property line. The location of the Dutch Bros and the multi-tenant building, the addition of 19 trees onto the site, as well as the preservation of the 33 trees that are already on the site. The queuing line for Dutch Bros accommodates for the stacking of 34 vehicles. There's also towards the end of that queuing line, closer to Alamo Drive, that is an escape lane to allow for faster service, and the applicant can speak more about that. So during the public review process, we received several public comments addressing various concerns. For traffic, there's concern that the vehicle stacking will overflow into Alamo Drive. Based off of how the project has been designed, they have stacking for 34 vehicles. They are also using a runner system to provide a speed of service, have the escape lane, and also the stacking is, or the queue line for the drive-through starts at the rear of the property to also prevent any, I would say, overflow onto Alamo Drive. So another concern was the proximity to residential that's already existing neighboring to the property. The design is to have the sites as far away as from the residential. Where the drive-through line is on the opposite side of where the multi-resident housing is, and then also they on the rear of the property line, instead of having a 10-foot landscape buffer, they have it's a 45-foot landscape buffer. There's another concern about emissions from idling cars. Dutch Bros has, by the way they operate, they are trying to have speed of service. So like they won't have for their ordering system, they have runners. So the employees will go directly to the cars to take their orders to increase the speed of service. They are also going to, and then so, and one of the last concerns was noise. So for with this project, they are not going to be using any loudspeakers for the ordering service, since they will be using those runners. And they are also providing a masonry wall along the property lines that are adjacent to existing residents to also buffer the noise, and also the preservation of trees will assist with that. Some notable conditions of approval that staff wanted to bring to the Commission's attention. For noise, staff wanted to incorporate 3 conditions that helped mitigate noise that from the project. The hours of operation for Dutch Bros is limited to 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. They are required to have a noise analysis if there are substantial complaints received based off of this project. And condition number 8 prohibits the use of loudspeakers. For building design, during the review process, staff and the applicant have been working multiple times to agree on the elevations and design of the multi-tenant building. There have been 3 versions that we have worked on. Initially, when staff had submitted the staff report and the conditions of approval, the applicant was opposed to condition number 15. However, we have since been able to agree. On this slide, you're able to see the essentially the transition between our initial submittal of this project. It didn't have many secondary materials, and there was not much differentiating between the different tenant spaces. Then we received another resubmittal, and then from there we are at our 3rd resubmittal that staff and the applicant have agreed on based off of some more conditions from condition number 15. This is an example of what staff was attempting to ask from the applicant. We wanted to see a mixture of materials differentiating the tenant spaces, as well as stone veneer that comes from the ground level. In our staff memo that we have provided to you, we had made some changes to conditions of approval number 1, 15, and 16. The condition of 1 just provided more flexibility on the total number of tenant spaces, since the tenant spaces may decrease if a tenant decided to take over 2 spaces or more. Condition number 15 were those revisions that staff and the applicant were able to agree on. And then condition number 16 was just to ensure that the multi-tenant building and the trash enclosures matched by incorporating the same colors. These revisions are consistent with the general plan, zoning, and development standards. So for the conclusion for tonight, staff does support the project. The project meets the required findings. It complies with the development standards as conditioned, and the design will complement the Vacaville community. The recommendation tonight by simple motion is for Planning Commission to approve the categorical exemption and approve the conditional use permit and design review request for Dutch Bros and the multi-tenant building, subject to the revised conditions of approval. Are there any questions or comments?
Commissioner questions? I'll just ask. So condition of approval number 1, it looks like it removed the subject to the approval of the director. The revision that was circulated seemed to imply that approval wouldn't be a condition, but review would. So I'm curious, does our director need to approve it or just review it under the revised condition that was circulated?
Any modification to the project tonight would require subsequent review by our department. That review can be done ministerially or discretionary, but we're recommending changes like combining tenant spaces for the ease of different tenants, or changes to the materials as identified by condition number 15 be handled ministerially, where they don't have to go through another development review process.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I just noted that the language said that it would be, the revised language removed the word approval. It just says subject to the review of the director. It didn't say, whereas previously it said review and approval. So, words matter. And if we're removing that approval word, I'm just curious why it wasn't review and approval.
Certainly, it's up to the commission if you'd like to see modifications to the conditions of approval.
So thank you. I'm just curious. So is it review and approval, or was that just like a Scrivener's error?
No, it's still review and approval. If you look at condition number 1, towards the bottom of that, it requires that any modification or any approval for building permits still requires approval from the Director of Community Development. And that approval and review is administered through staff during the building permit review process. So there's still a process where staff will review changes to the project, which may include combination of tenant spaces or changes in elevation materials or the way that it's done. It's still subject to the Director of Community Development.
Okay, yeah, as long as she's the approver, it just seems seems like the change made it ambiguous because it had previously said subject to the review and approval of the director, and now it just says that the director would review it. So I didn't know if that was just Scrivener's error or if she still needs to approve it. But sounds like she does need to approve it nonetheless. Excellent. Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Rudin?
My question is kind of in regards to the amount of cars that can line up. So before we have meetings on any topic, I do like to scroll through social media and see, you know, kind of what are hot buttons. And everybody always goes back to the Elmira and Peabody one. I'm just curious. So I live near the Alamo one, and I know before that one went in, there was a lot of, oh no, there's going to be cars overflowing. I never see cars overflowing onto Alamo. And I was curious for perspective. How many cars can be in the queue for the Elmira Peabody one, and how many cars can be in the queue for the one on Alamo and Nut Tree, to kind of get perspective of, I mean, 34 cars, that's a lot of cars to hold, so I don't see it being a problem overflowing on Alamo.
Yeah, for the project of the Dutch Bros that is located on Elmira and Nut Tree, or not Elmira and Peabody, they applied and they were approved with a stacking of 10. For the one that was on Alamo and Nut Tree, that one was applied for, I believe it was 21.
Oh, so this is significantly
this
more.
project does have significantly more vehicle stacking.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Vargas?
Yeah, can you go to page 2 of the slide, please? Of the slide deck. Is there any, so the existing multifamily residential buildings, any impact to those buildings whatsoever? Was that, I'm assuming that was vetted, but is there any impact to those existing?
There's no proposed improvements that are going to be on those residential lots.
Okay.
But there are improvements that will be a barrier between those lots. The developer will be installing a masonry wall between the multifamily tenants to the south and then also the existing single-family residential to the east.
That was going to be my next question. Okay, thank you. So I was trying to get a sense of going to what Commissioner Rudin had said, cars in the queue. Can you go to that slide? I believe it's page 7. Thank you. So it looks as if they're coming from Alamo, then turning directly in, correct? Is that, I didn't see where it said Alamo Drive, so that's my assumption.
Yeah, so where that car is towards the left side of the screen, that's going to be where Alamo is. So that when the customers come into the site, they will be turning onto the site and then heading towards the rear of the property, and that's where they'll be entering that queue lane.
Okay, so car comes in immediately to the left, and then they're just kind of shepherded through, right?
So they're going to head towards the rear of the property.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. And then next question. So it sounded like the emission mitigation plan was speed of service, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, no other mitigation measures possible, just speed of service?
Well, typically, vehicle emissions associated with drive-through facilities are not identified as a mitigation measure.
Okay.
And it's not identified as an impact. However, in this case, the applicant has anticipated the needs of their customers by developing the system where they're going to have runners going up and down the aisle so that they can get them through the process.
Gotcha. My assumption was there was an impact, therefore the comment regarding emission mitigation. So, and then hours of operation, just so I understand, 5 a.m. to 11 p.m.?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The other Dutch Bros, are they similar hours of operation?
I believe the applicant will be able to answer that.
Okay. That would be great. Unless there's other commissioner questions.
We do have other commissioner questions. Commissioner Lightfoot.
Thanks for that clarifying question. That's good compared to what we've got going elsewhere. My question's about traffic, and I'm curious about how. So in our notes and they say right there, there are 34 cars are going to be queued up here, plus parking stalls for the multi-tenant building. So on Alamo Drive, we're anticipating cars making a left-hand turn from that beginning, ending left-hand turn lane. And so they'll be able to turn left into this area as well as right. And they'll also be able to turn left out of here as well as right onto Alamo.
There's no median, so it's full access.
Okay, so is there something that we take into consideration? I mean, it's noted that there's 34 cars. There's also parking stalls. Is Alamo Drive adequate to handle that many vehicles turning into this property as well as out?
So basically, what we have is we look at what the number of trips coming and going in an AM and PM peak hour. AM peak hour is 7 to 9 typically, and PM peak is 4 to 6. Dutch Bros is a little bit different from what we have with regards to our trip generation manual, because our trip generation manual is all these counts that have been completed over multiple years. They're compiled, they're analyzed. Dutch Bros is a little bit more of a newer animal with regards to what type of service it has. And what the applicant had provided was because they have multiple Dutch Bros, at another location, what they did was they actually evaluated 3 different Dutch Bros in Sacramento, Lodi, and Turlock. That was very similar size. And the number of AM peak hour trips, the average is about 120, and that's 100 and a total of entering and leaving. And the same thing, it's about 122 in the PM peak. So that volume can be handled at this site with the driveway, et cetera.
Is consideration taken how closely it is to the traffic light at Marshall?
There's adequate distance for that. So to have 120 vehicles going in and out of a roadway like this for a commercial driveway is not unexpected.
Commissioner Bonta?
Yes, thank you. Back to kind of what Commissioner Rudin had said about the trips and the backup of 34 cars. Has there been any analysis done on what impact it would do to the Elmira and Peabody location? Would it take pressure off of that location by adding another location?
Basically, what we found is when we had the first Dutch Bros come in, everybody flocked there from everywhere. Then when the second one came in, that amount of traffic sort of dispersed some. So it's anticipated that with the third Dutch Bros, that while they will generate some new business, it will help to disperse the other locations. Because if you're driving by the Alamo, why would you not stop there as opposed to going to one that's not as convenient? And the number of complaints have totally got away for all the Dutch Bros, because when they first opened up, we got a significant number of complaints. We worked with the Dutch Bro owner, and she made modifications to the site to help make service faster. And then when the second one went in, it's basically went away for the first one.
Thank you.
Courtney Wilkerson? I'll invite the applicant to field the question about hours.
Hi, my name is Matt Ellis. I work with Filippi Engineering. I'm here to speak on behalf of the applicant. There were a few questions I wanted to hit up that I heard through the commission. I believe the first one was about hours, and yes, these are the same hours that the other locations have here in town. So that's what they're asking for, the same hours there. Then we talked a little bit about traffic, some things that weren't discussed. One is that Dutch Bros typically their customers have what are called pass-by trips. You don't typically get in your car and say, hey, I'm gonna go grab Dutch Bros. You're out, you're driving to work, you go by, it becomes part of your routine, you drive in, you get your coffee, you drive out, or if you're out shopping and you said, hey, you know what sounds good? Let's go get a drink. Let's go get something from there. And you're already out on the road, so you're not adding additional traffic to the system. What you're doing is you're just stopping by and having to pass by. You come in, you leave, and you go on with your day. Additionally, just something that Dutch Bros corporate does for all of their stands is they have a traffic management plan. Obviously, we all think that the 34 stacking is going to be more than adequate. If it's not, there are additional things, additional signing that is on site that can help direct traffic. And if there are other, they have a plan that they provide for each one of their drive-through stands, and they make sure that they have additional signage, additional training, et cetera, so that that can mitigate some additional traffic. And one thing we would definitely like to highlight, especially in regards to emissions, is the escape lane. There's a difference between the Elmira location and the location on Alamo. Primarily the one on Alamo, and that's the one I typically drive past to get my cup of coffee on the way home. But that one has an escape lane, and the runners not only take your orders, but they can also run drinks out to your car. So if you have someone, let's say it's 2 o'clock, everybody's doing that 2 o'clock coffee rush, somebody's getting coffee for their entire office, they're getting 6 or 8 drinks, and they're stuck at the window while they're making those 6 or 8 drinks. They will also make additional drinks, run them out to the cars behind, and those cars behind can then escape out of the drive-through lane to keep those vehicles moving, keep the lanes down, keep those emissions lower. And one thing also we wanted to highlight.
I'm sorry, can I just get a pause right there? Commissioner Vargas?
Oh, he can finish. I'll ask when he's done.
One last item on emissions. This site, it's a beautiful site. I've been driving by it my entire life. Has some beautiful, gorgeous oak trees. Unfortunately, there's one tree that is sick, and that is one tree we like to keep, but it's just not healthy enough to keep. We are only removing one tree on the entire site that is healthy, and that's because it's right in the middle of the drive-through lane. We're trying to preserve these beautiful native trees and help keep those emissions mitigated by having these, old growth oak trees on the site to help, provide shade, have the emissions mitigated, et cetera, et cetera. This is not anything that's required, but it's something that our franchisee who's here today, it's important to her, and so it's something we've incorporated into the site.
What kind of trees are you planning on installing?
I don't know. The landscape plans haven't identified. There are going to be some large trees. I think we've talked about Japanese maples, maybe some Chinese pistache, stuff like that. The typical parking lot and street trees that we see here around Vacaville. The landscape architect is Jim Claybaugh, who's a local landscape architect. He's done a lot of the work around town, and he knows exactly what the city wants and looks for and those kind of things.
Yeah, quick question. Was there any other location considered maybe an existing vacant building for Dutch Bros?
I don't think that's been considered recently. It has been considered in the past, but that didn't work out at that time. And this is a vacant site that has been vacant since the 80s. So this is a good spot that we can, bring some liveliness to that section of Alamo and bring some traffic and hopefully bring in some additional businesses with the commercial space as well.
Commissioner Fortney.
Real quick for the applicant, let us know how many stores this is for you or how many shops this is for you. And you probably have it down to a science now from when somebody places their order from a runner. How fast is a car through this, even if they're stacked?
So this will be the third space here in Vacaville for the applicant. And she owns 2 more in Fairfield. One's under construction now.
Is it okay if we can hear from the applicant?
Oh, sure.
Welcome.
Matt's trying to help me out. I get very nervous. So
we don't bite.
No, I'm opening a new location in Fairfield. So this is going to be technically my 5th location once this one gets going. We do have timer systems. I can see transactions in an hour. So I have a pretty good idea about, 30 minutes in an hour, how many cars we can get through. So the one on Elmira, they can do, I think last week we did 118 transactions an hour. So it puts us, right at 30 seconds a car.
Congratulations on your success so far.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wilkerson.
Do you live local?
Yes, I do.
Do your kids go to school here locally?
Yes, they both go to school here.
Do you guys give back to the community any type of way?
Yeah, we do. We actually just raised $6,600 for the Play for All part for our annual Duck for Kid fundraiser last week.
Okay. I just want to highlight that we have a small business that is local and that is giving back to the community as well. And you hire locally as well, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I just wanted to make that highlight. Thank you.
Not that we're discriminating against non-local business owners, but we're definitely proud to see a Vacaville businesswoman succeed here. Excellent. With that, we'll go ahead and open up to public comment. I'm going to open public comment.
Hi, Alicia Minion. I just have a general question. So drive-throughs in Vacaville, just in general, I was wondering how many of the drive-through locations are required to undergo a traffic study? So many other cities, like my former city, traffic studies required for drive-throughs. I remember when I appealed the McDonald's project. That was like my first day I ever came into council chambers. Anyway, I remember I asked the staff for the traffic study and there wasn't one. And then I had made a request for like the Burger King on Peabody, Alamo, and there wasn't a traffic study. So I was just wondering, just general question, traffic studies and drive-throughs, are they required? If not, why not? And maybe this is something Planning Commission could study later, because there are areas in town, I'm not talking about this particular Dutch Brothers, but like where Cane's, I can't remember the chicken place, and then the In-N-Out Burger, that blocks traffic, not only on the street, but also where the FedEx is. Like I won't go to FedEx anymore because the line goes into there, and if I park, I can't get out. But anyway, just something to think about, just generally, if not already required, just requiring traffic studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minion. Gwen, did you?
Okay, so basically, we didn't do a traffic study for Dutch Bros because it's about the 100, and it's 100 new trips. And the applicant basically touched on pass-by trips. So a pass-by trip is I'm just driving by, I decide to go get a cup of coffee, I pop in, I pop out. While it's a new trip to the driveway, it's not a new trip to that actual roadway. So typically for a coffee place or a retail shopping mall, the pass-by rate can be anywhere from 20 to 60%. So when you have that 120 cars that Dutch Bros is going to add, it's usually about 50% reduction, well below the 100 trips, and it's not going to trip a threshold for level of service. Additionally, what we do is we do look at stacking distance. So the Starbucks that's on Harbison, the way they were originally proposed, they wanted to have it such that they would be stacking out into the driveway and potentially blocking the driveway access. We actually made them do a queuing analysis of we counted other Starbucks, and because on a Saturday, I'm sitting at a traffic signal, I can see a Starbucks over here, and I can count, there's 13 cars there. And so we made them flip their site so that all the stacking was on site. So with this particular location at Dutch Bros, they have more than adequate stacking on site, and even when they use up all 34, if they ever use up all 34 spaces, then when they then stack on site. They won't impact the public right away.
Maybe this is a more appropriate question for Aaron or others, but do we require, are there instances where we require traffic studies?
Yes, we do. So we look at general plan consistency. So our level of service for general plan is either a D or a mid D, depending upon whether you're downtown or outside the downtown area. We don't do level of service for CEQA anymore. We do VMT. So we will do a traffic analysis if you have a general plan amendment and it doesn't meet one of the exemptions for VMT. So like, for instance, we required McMurtry to do a VMT level, no, excuse me, a VMT analysis, but not a level of service analysis because it's over the threshold for vehicle miles traveled, but it's not over the threshold for level of service. The other thing that we look at for level of service is that we have a traffic impact fee, which was recently adopted. It was adopted in June of 2022. With that, we looked at citywide, what the existing land use is, what the existing level of service are for roadways and intersections, how much land use we project, and we had a little bit less than the build out, and it's basically the build out of the northeast area is what we looked at. And then we identified what improvements that we need to make, both intersection and roadway improvements. And so those projects are included in the traffic impact fee. So if I am pulling a building permit, I am paying towards those improvements to ultimately be constructed. So and that's why we have this threshold of, we only want to look at a project if it's going to potentially create a new impact above and beyond what was already addressed in our traffic impact fee. So if you have a big, large area of maybe 700 or 800 single-family dwelling units that are coming in, that's going to be a general plan amendment that hadn't been considered. Clearly, we look at those for level of service and general plan consistency. Clearly, if it's not consistent with the general plan, it would also be looked at for vehicle miles traveled. But for a Dutch Bros like this, that actually only generates a few more new trips, and that's already been looked at when we did the traffic impact fee and also our general plan. You know, that's how we sized our roadways, that you don't want to burden those projects with doing extra studies, more costs, when it's not going to result in you have to do this XYZ improvement. Now, if they were by a location that had an unacceptable level of service, then we would look at it more closely and it would be scrutinized more.
And it sounds like it might also fold into the review process where, as here, it's an exemption under CEQA. So there wouldn't be like an EIR that might look into the full traffic and transit and all of those other impacts. And it's consistent with the general plan. There's not a rezoning. All of the sort of triggers that might look into, that might suggest something, a deeper analysis, you've already looked at that.
So with the general plan and with the traffic impact fee update, we looked at citywide what improvements there are going to be. So unless, we're only now looking at general plan consistency with, is it a D or a mid D? And if it's operating acceptably, we have improvement. So even if I make you do a traffic impact study and you create an impact to a certain intersection, if I have that intersection already identified in my traffic impact fee, the way CEQA used to work when we looked at level of service, we would override it because you would contribute to that improvement when you pulled your building permit. You are paying towards that particular improvement, even though it's not going to be built today.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Good.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Unless other. Okay, thank you, Gwen. Other members of the public wish to address this issue? All right, we'll close public comment and any other questions for staff from commissioners or other deliberation of this matter? Vice Chair Rudin?
I just wanted, Commissioner comments?
Please, yeah.
I just want to say I think this is going to be a great project. I really appreciate the addition of the trees and keeping the ones that we have. I think that the way that it's designed, I don't think traffic's going to be a problem at all. It's going to hold a lot. It meets the standards, and I think it's going to be a great infill project. And if everyone's ready, I'll make a motion. If other comments, please.
Please make a motion.
Oh, okay. I'd like to make a motion. Okay, am I reading both these? To approve the categorical exemption and approve the conditional use permit and design review requests for Dutch Bros and multi-tenant building, subject to the revised conditions of approval.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Vargas. Will Clerk Ernst please call the roll?
Commissioners Wilkerson, Courtney? Yes. Vargas?
Yes.
Lightfoot?
Yes.
Bonta?
Yes.
Vice Chair Rudin?
Yes.
Chair Klein?
Yes. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay, we will move to item B. Our next item for public hearing is the Villages at Vanden Meadows, which is Bright Sky Residential. Commissioners, does anyone have any ex parte communication to share? This is the time to disclose whether you met with anyone about the project and whether you received any new information that was not included in the staff report or attachments that would affect your review of the project. Nope. Okay. Comes to us with fresh eyes. Will the staff please give the presentation?
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners again. For this request, it is a minor design review for a to construct a build for rent community located within the Vanden Meadows area. This is constructing market rate rental units, and the subdivision will be located at 449 Ramsgate Drive. On the right of the screen, we can see the aerial imagery of the current area. To the north is Southtown Phase 1A. The Villages at Vanden Meadows development is located onto the east and south of the project site. And then over onto the west is Southtown Phase 3. The Villages at Vanden is currently under construction, as well as Southtown Phase 3 with KB Homes. Provide some project history. In 2013, the Villages at Vanden Meadows, the final EIR and the Vanden Meadows specific plan was approved, and there's an executed development agreement. In 2014, the City Council amended the Vanden Meadows specific plan to remove an apartment site that was supposed to host 192 dwelling units for apartments and instead replaced it with a 32 single-family dwelling sites. Between 2013 and 2017, the developer obtained annexation and environmental permits for the site. In 2021, the new house plans were approved for the Meritage homes that are located in that Villages at Vanden house plans, and these were designed or approved by the community or Director of Community Development. And then in 2023, staff received the application for the new house plans for the Villages Unit 1B, submitted by Bright Sky Residential. On the screen here is the aerial imagery of the site. You can see where the current development is happening over with the Villages at Vanden Meadows with Meritage homes. They are along Burgundy Street. To the north is Southtown Phase 1A, where those are existing homes. And then over into the west side, again, is where Southtown Phase 3, when this aerial imagery was taken, the development had not started again for those homes, but since this image, it has been, they begin construction of those homes. On the screen here is the map for the general plan and the zoning. The general plan designates the site as residential low density, which allows for a density of 3.1 to 5 dwelling units per acre. State code states that cities cannot count ADUs towards density. For the zoning, the site is designated residential low density with a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. With the state code, it also states that single-family residential homes are allowed to have ADUs, and our city code is also in compliance with this standard. For the project summary, they are requesting to reaffirm the previous environmental assessment, which is that Vanden Meadows final environmental impact report. This is a minor design review for the house plans, and they are also requesting an adjustment. The project includes 81 single detached homes. The homes range in floor area from under 1,300 to just under 1,800 square feet. There are 3 models. One is going to be a single-story house, and then the other 2 house plans are 2 2-stories. Each of the sites are going to include an ADU. They're on for house plan 1. The ADU is going to be an attached, and then for house plan 2 and 3, they'll be detached ADUs. The floor area varies for these ADUs. 2 of them are going to be 748 square feet, while the ADU on house plan 3 is going to be 974 square feet. All the ADUs are single story and under 16 feet in height. The themes that are on for these houses are going to be farmhouse, traditional, and transitional. The project also proposes a private clubhouse that will be just under 2,500 square feet, which will include various amenities and a leasing office. This request is also for an adjustment, which will reduce the minimum building separation from 15 to 10. This change is still in compliance with our city standard. The 15 feet came from the Vanden Meadows specific plan. On the screen here is the house plan 1, where you can see the variation of different roof lines and materials. They included stone veneer, horizontal lap siding, and Vanden throughout the project site. This is a continuation for house plan 2, which you can see they continue the design for the traditional farmhouse and transitional. On the screen here is the house plan 3. And then for this screen here depicts the ADUs for the project, which also is similar into the primary design of the primary single-family dwellings. On the screen here is the layout of the site, where you can see where the clubhouse will be located over off of Ramsgate Drive. There will be a pool, a turf area. This also shows where the houses and ADUs will be located. This is a typical lot layout. Some of the lots will have a driveway that will be going between 2 property lines. Each of the sites will have private recreational space, and each site will have 2 trees that will be planted. The private clubhouse is going to be 2,462 square feet. It's going to also incorporate a leasing office. Some of the amenities that will be provided for the residents is an outdoor swimming pool, outdoor spa, recreational room, kitchen, and outdoor barbecue. There's also that turf area that would also be available for residents. This is the elevation for the proposed clubhouse. It is going to be consisting of Vanden, stucco, and horizontal lap siding. For parking, this project exceeds city standards. They're proposing 405 parking spaces. For the main dwelling, they'll have 2 covered garage spaces, 1 uncovered driveway. For the ADU, they'll have 1 garage space as well as 1 driveway space. There also will be public parking along the street. Some notable conditions of approval that staff wanted to bring to the Commission's attention. For condition number 6, we wanted to include for property maintenance, and in the event in the future that the property owner decides to sell the properties and sell the individual lots and convert this build for rent to a for sale product, they will be required to create CC&Rs and an HOA, and this would be based off the director's approval. And then for condition number 7, is about the clubhouse. Because this is going to be where the leasing office is and where all the amenities are for the residents, it is important for staff that they must start the the construction of the clubhouse by the 35th lot, and the clubhouse shall be operational by the completion of the 81st lot. Condition number 8 is to ensure that this project is in compliance with state law. Because there's over 16 units in this residential rental project, the applicant will need to have a on-site manager, and so this condition just requires that the applicant provide that information on which lot they will designate as for their on-site manager unit. As mentioned before, this project is part of the Vanden Meadows specific plan and had a environmental impact report that analyzed the impacts that would come from single-family homes. This project is still within that scope of that project because this is a design review for these new single-family homes. California State Code has determined that ADUs are ministerial and cities cannot require additional analysis like a traffic study. For public outreach, staff tried to go above and beyond and exceed the city mandates. The requirement is to do a 600-foot radius for the project site. We wanted to make sure that all of the Southtown and all the villages at Vanden neighbors were notified, so we extended that radius. We mailed a new project notice on April 11th. Then we followed up by hosting a neighborhood meeting where the applicant was able to provide more information to the neighbors about this project. And then on September 7th, neighbors were also again notified about this project. We received various public comments, which are seen in attachment 4, and then responses to public comments are located in attachment 5. As I said, the city received various public comments, one of them being housing types and the concerns about the ADUs and this building model being build for rent. Zoning laws allow ADUs within single-family residential sites, and ADUs are permitted, as well as being able to rent is an allowed use within the residential zoning district. Density was also a concern, how ADUs would play into density within the site. Based off of state law and our municipal code, ADUs cannot be counted towards density. Parking was another concern. As stated in a previous slide, they are exceeding city standards by providing 405 parking stall or on-site parking spaces instead of the city mandated 270. There was also some concerns about traffic. Our traffic division was able to provide that this project would add 18 additional AM peak hour trips and also 19 additional 19 p.m. peak hour trips. And also, since ADUs are ministerial, they are not required to have a traffic study. To continue with public comments, we have, there's another concern about taxes. The applicant will be required to go pay CFD 11 fees for the single family homes. For property management, some residents were concerned about the maintenance of the property. They will be having third-party services to maintain the landscaping, the pool. They'll have a management company that will be working with making sure that the community is still in compliance with parking and not creating excessive noise. And then one of the last concerns that staff had received was this concern about noise. This project is subject to the city's noise ordinance, and so the clubhouse would have to abide by that. In conclusion, staff supports this project because it meets the required findings. It complies with both general plan, zoning law, and state law. It also complies with the development standards as conditioned. The recommendation by staff is for the Planning Commission by simple motion is to reaffirm the Vanden Meadows final environmental impact report and also approve the minor design review adjustment request for the villages at Vanden Meadows Unit 1B Bright Sky Residential, subject to the conditions of approval. Are there any questions or comments?
Commissioner Wilkerson.
I have a question. What on the site is being done to disclose this potential change? Is there any notification? Is there any signs up? Is there anything telling people who could potentially be looking to purchase a new home right now, tomorrow, in the area, that this is going to go in there?
Yeah, so the applicant, city staff notified the applicant. The project was also notified within the newspaper, and there was an on-site posting.
Where's the posting at on the property?
The posting is on the corner of Burgundy Street. I believe it's Vanden and Burgundy.
Okay. And what next steps will be done if, say, approval regarding the disclosure of this area? I just have a concern that, full disclosure, I was out there 2 weeks ago with a client, and we talked about this area, and nothing, I didn't notice anything, I didn't see anything in the area. And so I just wonder that we always hear people are going to come in and say, hey, I bought here, I didn't know, no one told me anything. At least a sign, I don't think would be too much to ask. And in multiple locations, not just one in a hot corner where someone's coming in, but somewhere to where you're walking with your family. And you can see it from where I was. You can see the location and just say, hey, okay, I at least know that. I think that's something that we should definitely discuss, and I would be pushing for. So that's my only question for now.
John. Banta?
Hi, thank you. I had a question about, because it's a build for rent, right? So who's managing the rental of it?
The applicant will be able to provide a better answer for that.
The applicant want to? Yeah. If the applicant wants to get ready, someone from the team, Commissioner Fortney.
All right. Questions and concerns, some for staff, some for the applicant. And I'll probably refer to BTR, build to rent, so we don't have to beat that to death over. Staff, do we have any information from surrounding communities in regards to the impacts of the rental market with the BTR? What else? We've had Montesa, now this. Montesa was an island, not surrounded by other residents. I fully expected the next projects like this would be east of Leisure Town, maybe in Nut Tree. Now we're having lots that are already approved, leaving the inventory for sale stock, which is another topic. So do we have any additional projects coming or inquiries to staff, which would lead into impacts on that? If you want to go one by one, do you want me to roll them all off?
That's an easy answer.
Go ahead.
No, we don't have any other development projects that are built for rent.
Nothing? Okay. Impacts on the market, do we have any data?
We've done some research in other areas. It's not a criteria when we will look at architectural design review. We'll look at, is it consistent with the original approval? Are they single-family homes? Our code doesn't distinguish that it has to be for sale or for rent. We look at, is it an allowable use? Do they meet the setbacks, building height, things like that?
Is that something, Director Morris, we can have that discussion on how much BTR in Vacaville? What do we need?
In the commission's review of this project, you're reviewing the design review and adjustment request. So really your consideration should be focused on those findings you have to make and that purview.
Okay.
The commission doesn't have purview at this point over whether it's built for rent or whether it's built to sell.
We're very limited and, okay. So you just get to hear my comments. Okay. For the applicant.
The council hears your comments too.
For the applicant, your management staff, impressive. First grade for home builders. I see projects in Antioch, Lathrop, Elk Grove, Murrieta, and Fontana in California, but it looks like nothing on the market or actually livable. So let me know about if I'm wrong there. What are typical lease terms are in these communities? We have the minimum of what staff has required, but we need to hear from you. What do we have that's going to ensure that you have an effective building management and building maintenance in place? I don't want the short-term profit to outweigh the long-term possibilities of the negative impacts to those neighbors in that community in regards to maintenance and management. Personally, I have a concern of we don't know enough, and I'm concerned on the financialization or the impacts of financialization on the affordability of our single-family homes in the rental market. I got more, but I think we'll let that go and we'll just start the discussion there. But I would probably have to come back, Director Morris, and have you redirect me on what I'm allowed to do and what I'm allowed to not do tonight.
You've been here long enough, you know. I think that inclusionary housing that's on the council's agenda down the line, right? There are ways for the council to get into this, and it's not before us tonight, but.
And tonight's agenda, you have this project with its limited purview. There is a broader conversation happening at the council level about housing mix, types of housing, all kinds of housing, et cetera. But tonight, the commission's purview is pretty limited.
Thank you very much.
So I'm good. We'll let the applicant kind of address some things.
Okay. Thank you.
And do a presentation. Thank you.
No, I'm good. Commissioner Lightfoot.
So my comments or my questions are more about code and building codes. So is there a clear definition between an attached junior ADU and a condo other than them being on the same lot and not separated?
The condo environment would be a for sale product that somebody could own their property. When you have a single family residential unit and a ADU, it's all on one piece of property. So whoever owns that property owns both units. They wouldn't be able to subdivide or sell the ADU as a separate lot.
So this is being used as a tool to add an additional rental unit onto this site without the future. I know there's laws that are being worked on to maybe possibly separate junior ADUs and ADUs and for sale, but not passed yet, right? So I'm curious if there's actually building code that shows the way that an attached junior ADU versus a condo is actually constructed, and if there's any delineal lines other than the fact that they're on one lot versus two.
Dr. Morris?
There is no building code requirement like for area separation walls between an ADU or a junior ADU and the primary house. It is literally like a master bedroom type suite that happens to have a kitchen. So there are some requirements for noise attenuation, and that's actually just because it's practical to have that, but there's no standard where there's a lot of separation. It really is still one structure.
Is there also FEIR requirements between a junior ADU versus?
No, because it's one house. If it's attached, it's one house, and so it's not looked at as, the fire code doesn't say you have to protect one part of the house from another part of the house. It's looked at as one home.
I think that's a detriment to the way that.
Sorry, just a point of clarification. The project doesn't have any junior accessory dwelling units. It does have attached or detached accessory dwelling units.
So attached, just so I'm clear on my definition. So attached dwelling unit or attached ADU, that's not considered a junior ADU.
Yeah, junior ADUs can be smaller, and they're primarily attached to the main dwelling of the house. Accessory dwelling units can be located on the same lot, detached, or they can be attached by a breezeway.
So what's the difference between a junior ADU and an attached ADU?
It's usually the square footage. The maximum, I think, for a junior accessory dwelling unit is 500 square feet. For an accessory dwelling unit, it can be upwards as large as 1,200 square feet.
Gotcha. So the way that this is currently designed, so there is no junior ADU because there's only a single family unit with an attached ADU, correct? And then another rendition or another plan that has a detached ADU. So there's currently in this, like, technically they could add a junior ADU to the single family dwelling unit right now. Is that still a possibility with the way this is going?
That's not the proposal that's in front of the commission tonight.
But it's possible, correct?
I would defer to the applicant to speak as to whether they have an appetite for adding junior accessory dwelling units or not, or if this is what it's going to be built as and there aren't any intended modifications later on down the road.
Or let's say future for sale of somebody, that's hypothetical now, future for sale, if this product ever does go to sale, there could technically be another unit added on to this with the current state law to one of the single family units.
Yes, correct. What state law says is they can have one single family, one accessory dwelling unit, and one junior accessory dwelling unit, and they can convert, say, that garage that's in the middle between the Plan 1 and the ADU on the left-hand side of the screen.
Yep.
They can convert that garage to a junior accessory dwelling unit. Yep. Junior accessory dwelling units and accessory dwelling units are allowed by state law. It's intended to provide more housing.
Yep. And so then on top of that, I noticed this doesn't actually have any effect on our RENA numbers for low or moderate income. So we're going through this process of junior ADUs on multiple sites now, and no benefit to the city RENA numbers for low income, because originally it was supposed or presumed that ADUs were going to be allocated towards low or moderate income, correct?
Get credit for producing ADUs, and we've been able to take credit for them as lower income units based on doing research on rental prices. So our current RENA actually articulates an expected number of ADUs that we're going to produce, but it doesn't necessarily assign them to income categories. The city of Vacaville does, though, have other development projects that are actually proposing deed-restricted ADUs or junior units, in which case we will count those toward the RENA. And we'll count them as ADUs as well.
So, but this project doesn't attribute any.
We will count the ADUs and we'll report the number of ADUs produced with this project if it gets approved and the building permit's issued, but we won't count those ADUs as deed restricted because they're not.
Yeah, so I'm looking at table 1 it's page 81 of my report. This only attributes 160 units to above moderate income. Yeah, so what process do we get, if approved, we'll go back to hopefully count those? I'm kind of clear on that.
So if the project gets approved and the building permit gets issued, we are actually required to report annually on how many accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units we produce. And we have a target that we need to hit over the next 8 years.
And will those help our RENA numbers? Or I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
The RENA numbers are comprised of different kinds of housing. The focus is on the below moderate income housing, but the state is also requiring, they've set a goal for us for how many ADUs we have to produce, and these projects like this one produce those units that we will take credit for. So if for some reason Vacaville did not produce any ADUs during the next 8 years, it would look like we were doing things to stop ADUs, which would be a violation of state law, to put it another way.
Okay, that's all I got, I think.
Beta, anything?
No, I'm okay right now.
Vice Chair Rudin?
I don't have any questions.
I'm going to invite the applicant to provide answers to questions that were raised before we open public comment.
My name is Charles McKeag, president of Bright Sky Residential. We're opportunity to share our project concept with you this evening, and wanted to thank staff for their efforts working through the design review. So I'd love to just sort of briefly touch on a couple of things. Obviously, there have been concerns about property management, maintenance, et cetera. Wanted to get some better understanding about impacts on the rental market. I can sort of seek to address some of those things, recognizing and just obviously being cautious that obviously this is a design review that's in front of you. We haven't really talked about the design of the project yet. And so, and I think that some of the questions that you guys may have with respect to some of the legal aspects of ADU law, JADU law, what applies, what's counted toward RENA numbers and not, they're really kind of maybe beyond my scope. We do have our land use counsel with us, and I'm sure she'd be happy to questions if you wanted to dig into it. But again, I think just sort of trying to be faithful to the process. A lot of those questions are interesting information, but not necessarily what's really before you tonight. So, but I will do my best to answer some specific questions if I could. I think the most important one would be, I think, regarding maintenance. What is our vision? What is our track record? We are, Bright Sky is a subsidiary of the Resmark companies. Resmark companies have been in business for over 30 years, developing and financing the development of multifamily and single family all over the United States. Thousands of multifamily units, both owned, operated, and under management. Tens of thousands of single family homes produced around the United States, with a large concentration in California. Bright Sky's platform, as you noted, Commissioner, has begun in California, and we're moving into other markets as we move forward now. On the management side, Resmark, and now with us as Bright Sky, has always partnered with the largest and best professional outside management companies in the business, Greystar, FPI, and others. For this project, we are currently intending to work with Greystar. Greystar owns, operates, and manages more housing units in the United States than any other company. In fact, many of them combined, decades of experience. You really aren't going to get a better professional management operation than you're going to get with the folks at Greystar. It's really important, I think, for folks to understand that one of the key distinctions, and I've been in the for sale home building business for most of my career. One of the things that I think potentially can be overlooked, and I get that there's fear around something that looks different, but contrast between a for sale community that's managed by an HOA, which really means it's not managed, because individual homeowners can do a lot within the boundaries of their lot that their neighbors might not like. They can leave a rusty car sitting out, they can play loud music, and they can do like, because the HOA is not this self-executing organization. It takes a lot to try to enforce your HOA CC&Rs. We have on-site management through our management company. We'll have 5 to 6 full-time employees that work on that site. Plus, we'll have an on-site manager who lives on the site. We'll have leasing agents that are there during the hours of operation for the leasing office. We'll have we'll have property manager, assistant property manager. We'll have maintenance chief, assistant maintenance person. They're there. Every lawn gets mowed. Every house gets painted. Every gutter gets fixed. Every leak inside of a house gets taken care of. Every noise complaint gets addressed, because we have leases that we can terminate in the event and evict people in the event that they violate them. I think it's really important to remember that that is a very key distinction between a rental community and a for sale community, is that HOA can't just make people sell their house. We have the ability to, but not only manage and hopefully prevent through our leasing operations and the vetting process and the background checks, who comes into the community, but we have the opportunity to police and manage how they operate ongoing and remove bad apples if they ever show up. And so I think that's just an important piece of the puzzle that, if you go to a place, relatively new built for rent community, that's townhouses in town at Harbison. Beautifully designed, beautifully maintained. I think looking at those communities, and yes, that one may be a little more dense than some folks might want to live in, but I think it's important to recognize that when you put nice amenities, nice product into a community that not only the residents have pride in, but the owners are proud to keep that way, I think you really have something that can be additive to the community we're obviously proud of maintaining that. And think about it even selfishly from a business standpoint. Does us absolutely no good to let this be managed and unmaintained. That would just be sort of like us taking dollars and burning them. So obviously most of us don't want to do that, especially when we're in business. So it's critically important to us that we continue the tradition of well-maintained, professionally maintained and designed communities. I think that's perhaps maybe, I mean, in terms of the overall questions, I know there were some others. Staff has done a great, lease terms that 12-month leases. This is not short-term stuff. Really, if you think about the way to think about build for rent in your community, single-family rental, this is my kids. This is the people who, at a 7% mortgage rate, cannot get into a homeownership. Right? These are folks these are young professionals. These are move down folks. These are folks like you and me who would love to be in a nice community. But it's tricky, right? Homeownership has become extremely hard to attain. The Build for Rent platform is designed to help people get into that property ladder and give them an alternative to apartment living that is really high quality, designed beautifully, and maintained and executed beautifully. One of the reasons why we include an on-site amenity, we want to give people a really high quality of living, and this is far from sort of moving down the scale. This is an opportunity to provide something really great and valuable at a price point that frankly would be unachievable for most people in today's cost environment.
Can I just pause you there?
Yeah.
Commissioner Vanden?
Yeah, I had a question. I really like the concept again. My question is, how long is it going to stay for rent? Because it's made a comment in there that at one point it's going to go for profit. So because it's not deed restricted, right? Like the Montesa project was a 55-year deed restriction. So why is it not deed restricted? I'm just curious. And then what is that? What does the turning it to for-profit process look like?
So think about the question really about converting it to for sale versus for rent.
Okay, sorry.
The other piece of the question, is I'm hearing you correct, if you look at Montesa had a deed restriction for certain units because one of the myriad requirements to create junior ADUs and have them not owner occupied by the unit to which they're attached is there are regulations that require, there's a very complicated series of regulations, and I'm sure they talked about it when staff presented it, but it is somewhat complex. But they had to do that in order to include ADUs. So if you think about the Montesa project, there were 3 units on each lot. Here we have 2. That was a decision we made because we, frankly, trying to wedge a 3rd unit in didn't make sense. And we wanted to, it's really key for us that we want to be able to provide some on-site yard space for folks. Provide an attached garage for each of these units, right? So you have to make some compromises there. We didn't want to go down the JADU route to try to sort of wedge in that density. So that's why we did not go that route, as there was no regulation that sort of required it the way it was for Montesa. We have 0 plans for converting this to for sale. We are a company that is built and financed and lives and dies by having a rental portfolio that we own, operate, and maintain. And so there is nothing in our business plan about selling individual lots off to individual homeowners. So could I envision some circumstance where that was sort of forced upon us by economics under some circumstance? For sure. But our business plan is to own, operate, and maintain this community.
Yeah.
How did you choose Vacaville for this project?
Great question. It's Vacaville. As time has run, Vacaville sort of become an extension of the core Bay Area in a way, as many places that sort of felt like they were farther out, they're really becoming, house prices here have gotten very high. And as the opportunity and the financing has been there to look at single family communities as potential rental communities has sort of taken off, we know there's demand for in areas like this where you got folks who are looking for something that's attainable but nice, get there on the for sale price curve, And as communities like this have gotten more expensive, that's where you're seeing a lot of demand and a lot of interest. So Vacaville and other places that sort of have that same dynamic have become quite attractive.
So is this a market rate project? You'll be.
Yes. Yeah.
And how did you, bless you. So it looks like, and this might be a question for staff, the minimum building separation is changed from 15 to 10. And you want to tell us a little more about that? It sounds like, I mean, you had brought this up, that you weren't wedging in JDUs. Can you tell us a little more about the separation?
Yeah, so for the site plan, because some of the driveways are combined, it just became that some of the sites ended up having the side yard setbacks 5 and 5 on both lots. For instance, between on the typical lot layout, you'll see on like the depiction for Plan 2 and Plan 3 that are towards the right of the screen. Because they are allowing for that combined driveway space. That is why the house plans were shifted over. So that are going to be 5 feet and 5 feet for the side yard setback.
Instead of 10 feet and 10 feet?
That is 7.5 and 7.5.
And so like, you'll be able to hear your neighbor pretty well then, huh?
Residential areas that are currently building single-family homes in Southtown, Roberts Ranch, Brighton Landing that's already built out have setbacks that are 5 and 5. We're not fielding any complaints about excessive noise or loud noise associated with, I can hear my neighbor. It's typical standard residential development. What you're witnessing at this location is that the Vanden Meadows specific plan was approved with older development standards. Those require a minimum 5 foot on one side, 10 feet on the other side. Since then, we've gone through a number of updates to our municipal code because we're trying to, we've heard from the development community and we're trying to adjust our development standards to make it easier for homes to be built. And so in our current municipal code, those standards for residential low density development changed from a 5 and a 10 to a 5 and a 5. So if we were to compare it to our current municipal code, they would be complying with that current zoning ordinance.
Important point. Yeah, Commissioner Wilkerson.
I didn't hear anything about disclosure.
Pardon?
Disclosure on site.
And just help me recall sort of specifically the question.
So you have your plot of land, and then in here right now, there's homes being built. And there's still going to be some vacant lots. The question is going to be is what would you be willing to do to disclose what you're putting on that site?
So one of the things we will always do when we have a project that we're getting ready to start construction is we'll put up a coming soon sign as part of our natural marketing effort because we want people to know we're there. So that's something we would do in terms of timing. I mean, that's really a question when we're getting geared up to get our building permits issued. And when we know we have a date, because we do like to be able to sort of set that forecast for people.
And you don't have that date yet?
Well, it's this point, the construction documents are in for review. So as soon as we've got a forecast on when we're going to start, our intent obviously would be to, we want to get the permit process. It's going through its first now, get through that this fall and get going before the end of the year. So sometime here, I would say in the next 30, 60 days.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you guys can hover. With that, we'll go ahead and open public comment. Mr. Lightfoot.
So I had a good segue on the shared driveway. I'm just curious, so looking at these as a single unit, right, or a single piece, what's the requirement for how wide a shared driveway is supposed to be? I mean, because if these ever happen to go to sale, I'm just curious I assume that there could possibly be a fence line put down that shared driveway. looking to see what the minimum width is and then what the minimum width for a driveway is anyways. I'm making sure that we're accounting for these going to sale. I'm just curious about what the requirements are.
Good question. We have worked with our Public Works Department to anticipate that, and what currently is in the conditions is it would obligate the developer to record an easement over that driveway so that way both property owners can use it for their access.
So there won't be actual a split. It'll be an easement as part of. So would these then have to be sold all at the same time? They can't be sold off individually. I know that talked a little bit about forming an HOA once they were sold, but
there are changes that the developer could make to the final map and to the lots for recording an easement on the property before they're sold.
So looking at these as single-family lots now, why isn't an easement required right now?
Under the Subdivision Map Act, the developer can't record an easement to themselves. They owned all the properties. So they control the access for all of the properties and regulate it. If they were to sell one of the properties and the property owner needs access to their lot through their property, then that's when that developer has to deed an access easement, a driveway easement, to that new property owner.
So this current setup that they've got that we've got presented in front of us right now with the shared driveway, if they were single lots or for sale lots, would that meet our current standards for driveways?
What is the driveway requirement width currently under the Vacaville driveway code?
I don't have that information right now.
Yeah, so I'm trying to now look at this project as these are single family lots. These are single family homes, and they have a shared driveway. And how did we take that into consideration in reviewing these as single family homes with a shared driveway? What are our requirements?
We have to look at what's in front of us.
No, I'm looking at this as
For rent products, so
But Ralph's point is that it has the potential to not be
we're not dealing with potentials. That's where I'm trying to go. We could go down that rabbit hole for hours on hypothetical potentials.
correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see a difference in a for rent project or a for sale product because these are individual single family homes that we're reviewing, correct? Is there consideration that I should be making for a for rent project versus a for sale project when reviewing single family homes?
I think that if we were to look at this type of development, which we're looking at a shared driveway access, this isn't the only type of product that we have in Vacaville that's done something like this.
Right.
We've got a number of them. You're going to see a shared driveway in Southtown Phase 3 where multiple property owners use that shared driveway to get access to it. They have them in North Village off of Del Mar Circle. Portofino also uses that area, that same method of a shared driveway. So it's not uncommon that a driveway has a set limit as vehicles are approaching off of it, but then it fans out. In this case, it's the exact same principle, is that individual property renters, in this case, not owners, would use that shared driveway.
So the Portofino, you brought up the Portofino project. So that is a Paseo style, correct? Is that what it's called, I believe?
On one elevation, yes, it does have somewhat of a paseo, but on the back of the elevations, all the garages front into that one alley-loaded driveway.
Yeah, so what in that shared driveway aspect, was there an easement recorded there and because they were being sold?
Correct, yeah. In that particular case, since you have multiple different property owners, the developer is required to record an easement with their final map that shows each one of these properties have what's called a public access to use this common driveway to get to their drive to the garages.
So do we have a set requirement for a single family home for how wide a driveway has to be?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but during the
Do we know what this current driveway width is? Proposed?
That's
The applicant's team probably might know that better.
Hi, did anyone from the applicant team want to address that point?
Hi, Reggie Decker, working with Bright Sky. The code I think that is pertinent to the driveway width is from the fire code, and I believe the width was 15 feet.
So should this technically be, is this 30 feet wide?
No, it's 15 feet total in order for the fire truck to have access.
Is the shared driveway 30 feet wide as we're looking at it?
No, 15 feet.
Okay.
Total.
So if these are single-family homes, is there not a requirement for 15 feet for each one of them?
That's right. It's 15 feet total, and then that would be why if for some reason this was to become a sale property and sold, that it would need an access easement.
So that's why I'm looking at it as a single-family lot side by side, and if this driveway is 15 feet, that's shown up here. So that means that one single-family lot only has a 7.5-foot driveway. Is that correct?
Well, no, it has a 15-foot driveway, and that's why it's a shared driveway.
Well, it's not. It's not being recorded that way. It's not. There's. This is a single-family home project, right?
Yeah, but I think the applicant's point is that the express access easement would grant you a right to be able to use your neighbor's portion of the driveway within the 7 feet or 7.5 feet, based on the grant of an easement at that point, if that were to come to pass.
We agree that this is adequate, meets our codes. This is.
It meets our codes. I think the complexity here, and I'm not a lawyer, and Nancy is a lawyer, but is that someone can't grant an easement to themselves. So therefore, there is no easement necessary while the property remains under one ownership. But as Senior Planner Enault explained, this project includes a condition of approval that says if these lots are ever conveyed separately, those easements will be recorded, so the two neighbors will continue to have access over each other's property.
Okay, so then what is the distance between the driveway and the plan? So let's say that there's an easement recorded for the driveway, full 15 feet. So do we know the distance between the plan and the edge of the driveway? And is that a required setback?
It's not, but I'm going to ask the staff that have the plans, or the developer that should be familiar with their plans, to answer your specific questions.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
I'm trying to look into this as a single family lot and the foreseeable future of the possibility of this being a for sale or even available for somebody to buy in the future. Like, I wanted to make sure that if we're meeting everything that we need to, so that is met in the future as so that this is adaptable, this is meeting our current standards, and we're not running into anything that may come up in the future that's going to inhibit this from being sold to anybody else. Or
I think I have some additional information that might help the conversation. If you were to look on your screen here, you see a shared driveway right there. As part of your exhibits, there is a plan that shows a dimension between the house and the property line of 17 feet. With a small landscape area, looking at the ratios, it appears as if that driveway on the shared would be 20 feet total, split 10 feet on the other side. Typical parking spaces that you're going to see within a parking lot that accommodates a vehicle is 9 feet wide. If you were to look at the other Plan 3 house plan that's there now, that has that same layout. But then if you're Plan 2, you've got primary residences that have double parking in their garage as well as parking on their driveway. That typical layout for parking side by side can vary anywhere from 16 feet width in driveways to 24 feet in width, with your standard driveway, actually garage spacing inside that garage being about 20 feet wide.
Okay.
So in the event that, in the hypothetical event that product was sold and somebody decided to put a fence there, there's still 10 feet worth of spacing on either driveway where a vehicle could go through. And that spacing, if you were to look on either side, there's still 7 feet on one side and some additional spacing on the other side where they could expand their concrete within that landscape area to even further widen their driveway that goes to the side of the house.
Okay.
And just to further clarify, so it does meet all of the zoning code and the municipal code, as well as the fire has checked to make sure it meets all fire
And
regulations.
I think just hearing a question you're asking that maybe folks aren't quite. Try and repackage it. You tell me if I've got it right.
Sure.
Trying to get at is a question like, if for sale project we're looking at, would it be any different in terms of
Yes.
these driveways?
Yes.
The answer is no.
Okay.
There was, the code doesn't specify in terms of the occupancy tenure. If I come in and this wasn't already a previously entitled project and it was starting from scratch, and we say, hey, we're for sale guys, we're KB Home, we're gonna sell these houses, it would look just like.
So, my only hurdle there is the easement, the future easement, right? And so how would the future easement look? And does that impede the sale of this lot, this single family home? And are we meeting our design standards in that scenario?
Okay, so because we own all these lots, as it stands today, it's illegal for us to record an easement in favor of ourselves on our own property. However, there's a condition of approval that staff has prepared that says if you sell a lot or any lots, before you do that, you're not gonna get to do so because we have these conditions and they're recorded unless you do a cross easement, because that's something that in the for sale world, you want to be able to do, because you don't want these two homeowners who own their property fighting it out. You want to give them the rights so that it increases their width. So, which is why that's so typically done. I think Albert did a good job of explaining in these other projects, for sale projects, you have these little cross easements on shared driveways so that you don't have homeowners fighting each other.
Yep.
So that also leads into the condition, the CC&Rs that we would have to prepare.
Yep.
It would reference these easements so that no one would be arguing in the future. So although we can't record that easement today because we own it and we're going to continue to own it, we are handcuffed. If we ever try to sell an individual lot or lots, we have to record those easements to facilitate. So if anything, the requirement to record the easement in the future if we sell is actually an enhancement to the future saleability if that's where it wanted to go.
No, I'm with you. And
Okay.
and I just want to make sure that we're clear that that recording of the future easement with the current design isn't going to impede the sale or the design change of this product. Right?
And my sense is that that's what you were reacting to, is that condition of approval that does reference the need to express that access easement. And these cases do get ugly for people that practice land use and real estate law. I mean, they're not pretty cases if it's not expressed. So excellent question. I am curious about the parking projections, because I don't know anyone that parks in their garage anymore. But these conditions, so our parking numbers all assume that there are people that still park in their garage. I park in my garage, but I know that none of my neighbors do. So I'm just curious, like, how many of these, if we were to back out garage parking, then what's the actual parking number?
This goes back to the distinction between for sale product and rental product. The homeowner doesn't own their garage, they don't own their driveway, we do. And our on-site management controls where they park and where they don't park. They have to park in their garage. We'll require it as a condition of their lease. They can't just fill it full of stuff like your neighborhood might in a for sale neighborhood. And then you're stuck and you can't do anything with it. So we currently on-site off the street. So excluding any on-street parking, we have 405 total spaces. So that's 5 per lot. requirement for this community would have been 270. So we're 1.5 times exceeding that number. In addition, we have about 115 street spaces that we haven't even counted. That puts us to almost 2 times the required number of parking spaces for the community. So I would say we are significantly overparked. In addition, we have the ability to control where cars go and don't, unlike in a for sale community where the HOA, you'd have to go and scream at your HOA board meeting and maybe they'd do something and maybe they wouldn't. So it's one of those little benefits, just like maintenance. If your neighbor doesn't mow his lawn, you don't have any power to force him to mow his lawn. Here we mow every lawn, right?
So you're telling me as we sit here today that people have to park in their garage?
They got to park. If you have a garage space, you got to use it.
That we could make that a condition. Every home sold in Vacaville. Thank you very much for that. With that, we're going to go ahead and open public comment. I'd invite the public to address any of the issues you've heard tonight. Open it up.
Hello, I'm Wendy Brecken. I'm a 31-year resident of Vacaville. I have some questions and some comments. There's some things that they don't meet the specific plan. That's what it says in the staff report. The building separation doesn't meet it. The side setbacks don't meet the specific plan or the city standards. So I'm kind of confused because it would seem that the specific plan is approved by city council. So how does the planning commission have the ability to overturn or reverse the city council on its specific plan? Also, I was looking at the site coverage, and I'm not sure, I just wanted explained how 14.09.060 is met for site coverage. I just am confused about that. Also confused about the old standards versus the new standards. It would seem because of the specific plan and development agreement, the old standards are locked in to a certain extent, especially on these setbacks and various things. So my question is that there seems to be, and maybe it's just my confusion, but so that it's real clear, I'd like to hear staff or somebody say that this whole lot, the single family units, the ADUs, all that is for rent. That's my understanding. And that's a big difference because when you look at what your discretion is, Ms. Morris had said that you don't have any discretion to look at this build for rent idea. However, according to CEQA, you have a 10-year-old environmental document. According to CEQA, you should be looking at any substantial change, and renting versus owning is a substantial change. You can look at a case called California Coastal Keepers Alliance. It's 64 Calap 5th 36, and in that case, they were dealing with a desalination plant, and they said they're gonna change the lease. They're gonna modify the lease, and so the court said, well, you have to do, I think, a subsequent EIR. It was a subsequent versus a supplemental EIR. I believe they said you had to do a subsequent EIR because you're modifying this lease. So my question is, if you're having a substantial change like this, you should be looking at the new changes, including the change.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But you are out of time.
Okay.
But if you wanted to wrap up your comment, just because you started a little.
Yeah, there was another new condition, the gridlock, because there's now mega fires and there wasn't mega fires 10 years ago. So we're talking gridlock. So in summary, I guess I'm wrapping up by saying, you do have discretion. You are the planning commission. You can look at these things like driveways or setbacks, and you have the discretion to make decisions.
Thank you.
Hi, Alicia Minion again. So I have a series of questions, but just kind of going off what Wendy Brecken was saying in terms of discretion. So I'm confused as well about the topic of discretion. So you remember the Southtown Apartments, that was subject to a development agreement, and the staff, like, that was let to die. And then because of that, the developer was allowed to build whatever they want because they were subject to state law, SB 330. So, but in this particular case, we have a development agreement, we have a specific plan, it was all approved by city council. So on the ADU law, can you tell me where in the law it says that the with regard to ADUs and CEQA and all the exemptions you get along with ADU, why can that law pierce the specific plan and the development agreement and override all of that? I don't understand. So if somebody, because to me, I don't think, because this was a 2013 project, everything was approved in 2013, my impression is we're protected. This project should be built based on what was approved. And so just because you insert ADU and there's a new ADU law, that is after the fact. So why is it that the state law forecloses on your discretion regarding the impacts of ADUs as though they don't, you have to pretend they don't exist in any particular way? Why is that the case when the development agreement and specific plan are intact? Secondly, on the thank you, Commissioner Light, with your excellent questions on the setbacks, the driveways. So I have a question. If you don't grant the setback exemption from 15 feet to 10 feet, what happens to the project? How does it change? And that's my question. Number two, are you setting a precedent? Do we always, projects that are tied in a development agreement, a specific plan, does Planning Commission always just, they can change setbacks and other design requirements? And that's allowed? I mean, what's the purpose of the development agreement and the specific plan if a developer can just come in and they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, by just going to Planning Commission saying, well, we just want to do this because it's easier to build this house or whatever we want to do. What's the point? I mean, we locked this in because this community is supposed to look a particular way with a specific design plan. And Southtown, I mean, I'm already going to be across from an oversized apartment project because the development agreement died, and now this is going to be around the corner. So we have these cumulative impacts. So this is a really key legal question. Frankly, I want this all tabled, and I would like a real legal opinion and then come back, because I think this is important because it's going to keep coming up, this kind of thing. And then with regard to the Melrose, the specific plan approved CFD 12, not 11, okay? And then, oh my gosh, I'm negative time. I have more questions.
I'll give you 5 seconds.
Okay, was there an at-risk building permit granted to this developer? Is there a fee deferral agreement granted to this developer? Because these are important questions, because it's just, okay. And okay, anyway, out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minion.
I don't have any questions, but I have a few statements. One, I appreciate all of the important questions you asked regarding this development. Some alarming statements that I heard from our planning department is they could turn that middle garage into a junior ADU, which means it makes us feel as a city we have no authority to tell them what they can and can't do. It's as if they're running our communities and they're running our city developers. Let me clarify. And the second alarming statement that I heard tonight was we are changing our building specifications and standards to make it easier for developers. That's not a good idea. Developers come, they build, they leave. They're not here and impacted by our community for the next 20, 30, 50 years. Or in the past, I've heard councils dealing with some bad decisions from prior councils or prior planning. So I think we should find a good way to keep communication open with the developer, where we work well with the developer. However, we don't let the developer lead us. We have a set point. So those are some alarming comments that I've heard from our planning department. And as far as, I just appreciate the comments that you, or the questions that you asked tonight, because that was something I was looking for with the North Village Phase 2 project. Thank you.
Ms. Espinoza. Thank you.
My name is Dana Kennedy, and I'm land use counsel to the applicant. If it would be helpful, I can answer some of the legal questions that were raised by public commenters.
Did you want to do that during public comment?
It's up to you. I just wanted to make myself available.
2 minutes and 46 seconds.
Why don't I get started, and I can use more time if I need it. I just wanted to kind of remind everybody of the setting for this project. The tentative map creating the 81 lots was approved 10 years ago, and the final map was recorded last year. So those 81 lots already exist. They are not, the number of lots is not the subject of tonight's hearing, nor are the ADUs, which are protected by state law. Somebody asked where that law is, and it's in the California Government Code, and the reason for it is the state housing crisis. Both the state and the city have made decisions to establish laws to promote and protect the development of ADUs. They provide kind of an affordable by design option. The city code specifically references actually ADUs being available for rental to fill in a missing portion of the housing market here. One other thing I just wanted to mention, and I included this in my letter to you in August, is that this project is protected by the Housing Accountability Act, which really limits the reasons for which it could be disapproved or conditioned in a way that would reduce the density. So there are 81 lots. The ADUs are not the subject of tonight's hearing. They cannot be the subject of tonight's hearing under state law. All we are looking at, and I know you've heard this repeatedly, you're probably sick of it, but all we're looking at is the design of the single-family homes tonight. So please keep that in mind. I am available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Kennedy. Okay, other public commenters? Okay, we'll close public comment and return to the commission for additional deliberation. So one thing that came up that maybe you guys can speak to is, and I know Ms. Kennedy did allude to this as well, state law about ADUs has changed. And so it forecloses local discretion in a number of ways. Do you want to sort of talk about that context?
Sure. The state has passed laws. We're in a housing crisis, and so they have a number of laws. One of them is the Housing Accountability Act. Others are density bonuses. Others are also accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units laws. These are all intended to streamline residential development. And so when you look at accessory dwelling units, if you were to take isolated instances where somebody has an existing house and they want to add an accessory dwelling unit into the back of the house, there's no discretionary action that is given to local agencies. It's all ministerial, as long as state law, as long as whatever they're proposing complies with state law. So the state has taken all that discretion out of local governments and says that you have a building permit, complies with state law, you must issue it.
And what is the name of that bill? So people are aware of the bill number. Do you recall?
I can get I can get the citation for you and send it as a memo with the accurate citations.
Just so that people are aware, and just to plain speak, it's a ministerial approval item for ADUs. Would that we had the discretion, we don't. So ADUs come before, don't need commission approval. Correct. Okay. And as a consequence, we can't consider the environmental impacts from the ADUs in the sense that that population, the additional population is excluded from CEQA review.
Correct, yeah. The other piece of the puzzle that goes along with projects like this is what is the environmental review? An environmental impact report was prepared for the Vanden Meadows specific plan project. It anticipated single-family residential development within this particular area. The state, the way that law works is the state supersedes local ordinances. So when you have a situation where the state has said ADUs, you must allow them, you can't require additional environmental review, they don't represent an environmental impact, then the attention is drawn to what is it specifically that's being proposed tonight. Single-family homes on single-family lots. It's consistent with that original environmental analysis. It's consistent with that original specific plan and development agreement. That's how our analysis works.
Very good. Other commissioners wish to? Yeah, time for commissioner comments.
In my time on Planning Commission, I think I've made it kind of, very clear that my interest is in diversity of housing types. I think that, we are beyond the point of either apartments or single-family homes. I think projects like this that are coming in slowly are addressing those needs through the ADUs, through, the smaller sizes. I think this will complement the neighborhood great with the ADUs. And watching what the state has done in the last few years, this is the direction the state is going. We're going to see more projects like this, and it's getting creative in trying to solve this housing problem. So those are my comments. I think this will be a good project.
Vice Chair Rudin. Other comments?
I just want to say thank you to the developers, the public comments, and to the staff.
Gentleman's row over here. Nothing else? Wilkerson? Okay.
We have to go there? No. We're at a design review. My problem is with the concept, not this project. So I think that's a discussion for a later time.
And I would urge you to bring that up during commissioner comments because I think what you have to add is important. And I know for a fact that the council listens to those comments. So thank you. Okay. Do we have a motion? Nancy?
Forgive me, Chairman,
Not a motion, but.
Not a motion. The citation is Government Code 65852.2 in regards to ADUs being only ministerially approved by local agencies.
And what does that inform us in terms of moving forward? What discretion do we have?
It just means that on a big development like this, the ADU portion of the development, we cannot objectively, we cannot add any kind of criterias or discretion in how they go about it. We just kind of have to accept it as part of the ADU laws that have been passed by California.
Got it. Thank you, Nancy. Commissioner Lightfoot?
One of the public comments, excuse me, one of the public comments was how does that law interact with current and in place development agreements that the city has? And they were looking for some sort of protection on an existing development agreement and how the development agreement interacts with that state law.
My understanding of these ADU laws is that they supersede any kind of a development agreement that we currently have because of the housing crisis that the state of California is facing. And so we cannot, on a project like this, impose any kind of discretion when it comes to the ADU portion because of our hands are tied.
You can review, so my understanding is that, yes, our hands are tied. That's an accurate reading of the law, but it's creating like a hazard, or it will result in a fire, hazard or some other, there are,
There are objective standards, but that doesn't include where, how, when to what degree, they have to be like, okay, housing kind of setback standards, things that can be applied uniformly without a lot of discretion from the planning department.
Very good. Thank you. Certainly.
And you jump in if you disagree, of course. But I have in my notes about the Housing Accountability Act and your ability to deny the project or reduce the density. In order to do that, you would need to make very specific findings based on a preponderance of evidence, and it's a very, very high standard. So I'm just going to read this to you so that we're on the same page. You would need to find that both of the following conditions exist. The housing development project would have a specific adverse impact upon the public health or safety unless the project is disapproved or approved upon the condition that the project be developed at a lower density. A specific adverse impact means a significant, quantifiable, direct, and unavoidable impact based on objective, identified written public health or safety standards, policies, or conditions as they existed on the date the application was deemed complete. And there is no feasible method to satisfactorily mitigate or avoid the adverse impact other than the disapproval of the housing development project or the approval of the project upon the condition that it be developed at a lower density. And just to be clear, these public health or safety standards are much worse. It's a much higher standard than a significant and unavoidable impact under CEQA. It's something that is truly dangerous, and there needs to be a written record of it that existed in June when this application was deemed complete. So that's the legal framework we're operating under.
And that's for ADUs, right?
That is for a project, a housing project that is protected under the Housing Accountability Act, as this one is.
Not ADUs or...
The ADUs are part of that protected project, but so are the single-family homes.
Yeah, I think the question was more specific to ADUs, but I take your point about...
You have even less discretion regarding the ADUs.
That's right, but yes. But
all right. Let me
thank
know.
you for the discretion school. Or
yeah,
the,
hey.
You know, your notes and the letter and all. Yeah.
To reaffirm the Vanden Meadows final environmental impact report, approve the minor design review, and adjust requests for the villages at Vanden Meadows Unit 1B, Bright Sky Residential, subject to the conditions of approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilkerson. Is there a second? Seconded by Vice Chair Rudin. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Wilkerson? Courtney?
Yes.
Vargas?
Yes.
Lightfoot?
Yes.
Fanta? Yes. Vice Chair Rudin? Yes. Chair Klein?
Yes. Congratulations to the applicant. Staff, thank you for the presentation and hanging in there. Payman, as usual, you really are the rock behind this group. Silent rock. And yes, everyone. Dana, great job, thank you. Appreciate everyone for hanging in there. Public comments as well. Thank you, Alicia. With that,
Are you going to talk?
why don't we take a 2-minute break? Is that okay? Okay.
Can we?
We don't have enough time for cigars.
Sorry.
2-minute break.
Can we give Noel 45 minutes? No.
Hey, you look like Noel, you good? I drank some water with. I thought you were good. I didn't record back. I was going to start coughing. Yeah. The other day.
Okay, we'll get you out of here on time. Go ahead and reconvene. Thank you for the break. So we'll pick it up with item 8, the director's report.
Thank you, Chair Klein and members of the Planning Commission. Let's go through this fairly quickly this evening. Some City Council updates. Since the Planning Commission last met on August 22nd, the Council approved some additional contract services for Four Leaf, and these are the services that my department's currently relying on to provide plan review and building inspection augments. So I have an update on the building inspection piece in a little bit. The Council also had a study session about digital freeway billboards, and they directed staff they provided interest to staff that they're interested in exploring digital freeway billboards. So just for the Commission's awareness, we have a work plan that we'll be launching, and we will present a study session to the Commission in the month. Part of getting public input and also getting Commission input while we develop some options for the Council. On September 12th, which was just last week, the Council received 3 presentations. One was a downtown specific plan implementation update, which if you haven't watched it, it's not that long of a presentation. It really provides a fairly comprehensive update on all of the city's efforts to make downtown Vacaville even better. We did a housing laws update, which is the same one the Commission got, except for we corrected one of the legal interpretations, which is that Vacaville is subject to the parking requirements for studios, because wherever we have our 2 intersecting bus lines, it means it's considered a major transit stop. So that one point of clarification was provided to the Council. Otherwise, it was the same presentation that you all got. And then lastly, I presented the culminating housing development in Vacaville, kind of the wrap up that brought all of the Council's previous study sessions together. So it was quite an evening on September 12th. Something that we might add to a future Planning Commission agenda, if the commissioners are interested, would just be a commission discussion debriefing from the Solano County Planning Commissioners training that happened last month. We had some good participation there. You can expect, well, there was a Menard community meeting out in North Village. There may be some follow-ups to that would come forward to the commission. I am recruiting a plan check engineer. I don't think this is actually a future item for the commission. I think this is more of an announcement now that I'm looking at my slides. But the announcement is that we're all going to be here at a special meeting on October 3rd. One of you is going to be remote, or it's going to work out great. Yes. Oh, you're going to be here. Oh my God, everybody's going to be here. It's going to be amazing. And the special meeting, we're going to talk about the Urban Reserve and the Weber Road development agreement for their temporary construction uses. So we've got a lot coming up. Building Division, I will be presenting the report this evening. I have to actually look at the slide to make sure I present it accurately. We had more building permit activity this month than last month, with a total of 30 single-family permits either issued or finalized. No new multifamily permits were issued. We're up a little bit, trending on the solar permits issued, up by 21. Revenue went up a little bit by 121,000, and actually inspections, we've really been completing more inspections because we have additional inspectors that we've been able to bring in to try to whittle away the backlog, the inspection backlog. Next slide. So this year to date, my building division, they're a very small team. They've issued 3,067 building permits. And as you can see, August trended a little bit higher than July, and almost comparable to June. Next slide, please. And going into the inspection activity, it's a huge jump to go from 1,100 inspections to 1,500 inspections. And this is because we entered into contracts through master developers, inspectors, to basically get out there and deal with the production subdivisions with basically extra staff, so that then our regular inspectors could swing into the homeowner inspections and the other inspections. And by that, we've actually really produced a lot more inspections over the month of August, and we've actually reduced the backlog significantly, which has been good for our bread and butter customers, mom and pop, people who live in our community who want their water heater inspected. They don't want to wait a month. Let's go to the next slide. So this shows our solar permit trends in relation to building permits. Actually, they're trending very similarly as per these 2 lines. They seem to be kind of marching in the same direction. So solar permitting is still down, but also residential permitting is not is steady but not up. So let's go to the next slide, where Payman Vivan, planning manager, will be voicing.
I will say something, Chair. I know you're excited about that. So for District 1, we approved to do pool house ADU. And you'll see in all districts, there's typically the miscellaneous residential and commercial TIs and plan checks and additions. solar and pools. For District 2, we received a new application to remodel the Sunrise Banquet Hall. This is the one that's smaller and in the corner. Some TI improvements there that you see there, description that you see there. We received a building antenna to install 13-foot telecommunications antenna on top of the roof. That's a new application as well. And then patio cover setback, and then we approved a rental center for Home Depot. And then again, miscellaneous residential, commercial improvements that we have in all districts pretty much. New applications for District 3, Harmony Village. So this is a Habitat for Humanity project or proposal. That's for 10 lots off of Scoggins Court and East Monte Vista. We're hoping to bring that to you in November. I'm doing the evaluation right now of the project, so we're hoping to bring that to you, like I said, in November. And then again, miscellaneous residential and commercial plan checks and improvements. District 4, we approved the swimming pool, so that's pretty exciting. District 5, we approved the Planning Commission approved the Montesa house plans. It was then appealed to City Council, and I think we're prepping that for the 26th, I think, to go back to Council on that appeal, and then again, other plan checks. District 6, that's where we have a lot of activity for house plans and the subdivision. So we did a number of plan checks for plan reads for villages at Vanden and Southtown Phase 3. And again, miscellaneous residential and commercial improvements. For advanced planning, so we're sort of at a standstill right now. It's not much of a difference than last month, except that we did hear back from HCD and they did deem our housing element to be in compliance with state housing element law. So it's a big deal. So thank you for all your efforts in City Council and helping staff get that through. Now sort of comes the fun part of implementing a lot of those programs, some of which need to be done by the end of the year, and others we're trying to get those done by middle of next year. We submitted an application to take some of those programs, some of the changes to the general plan and zoning to the Airport Land Use Commission. We submitted our application and we're hoping to be on the October 12th ALEC agenda for those items. And that's all I have for planning.
Mr. Piedmont, I have a question.
Sure.
What is a pool house ADU in District 1?
It's a pool house that also acts as it's an ADU that also acts as a pool house. They actually proposed, it's a modular, one of those trailers that you see, shipping containers that's been modified to have act as an ADU, but also as their pool house. I mean, really, in essence, it should have just been called the ADU, but they submitted their application that it was an ADU / pool house, so that's what it got approved at, but it's essentially an ADU.
Good hearing from you.
Oh, appreciate that.
Had very brief announcements. One, I've had some staffing changes, so I currently have a recruitment going for the Assistant Director of Community Development, and I was at the State Planning Conference over the weekend, and actually this morning I was there in Fresno, and I am definitely looking to bring on an assistant director to help me lead this department. And then I also have a vacancy in long-range planning. Tyra Hayes has moved on to Solana LAFCO after making a lot of amazing contributions to the city of Vacaville in her 24-year career. So those are some big shoes to fill, but I haven't got that recruitment out yet, but I will be recruiting for a senior planner to supervise and lead that long-range planning team. The last announcement is that I already made about the building inspections. It was looking so grim there for a while. I have a very hard time as a director explaining why a homeowner who's trying to get a small patio cover, a building inspection, why they have to wait 6 weeks. And so I can tell you that we're already scheduling out like in the following week and sometimes the same week. And we're trending toward being able to start going back to our more regular service where you call for an inspection and they can come out, we can come out the next day and help you. So we're getting closer to that. And that's notable because it has been so difficult with staffing changes and reductions up until fairly recently. That's all I had tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Morris, Payman, and Albert, hanging in there. I do want to move to Commissioner comments, but one thing, since you brought it up about the North Village outreach meeting, I just wanted a spectacular job. I mean, it was Corey, who's an unsung hero. We don't see his work, but we know when it doesn't go right, and Corey was excellent. Everyone was it made the, I've never been more proud of planning, and the community of Vacaville shone really bright as well. So I went, and I know Commissioner, I know Vice Chair Rudine was there as well. Others might have listened, but very good job, Director Morris, and everyone who made that happen. You guys should all be very proud. It was a huge crowd, and it looked like you guys had done it looked like you guys do that kind of thing all the time, which I know that we don't. So very well done. Anyway, with that, I'll go ahead and open it up. This is the time of the agenda for commissioners to inform each other of items of potential interest to other commissioners, such as interagency meetings, offer announcements as appropriate, or continue conversations from earlier. Commissioner Wilkerson.
Yes, thank you so much. It was great to see all the different types to just all the different types of events that Vacaville's been having. Living here for 43 years, there were times where there would be one event for the month and everyone would show up to it, or there'd be one event a week. And now you'll see football games and you'll see concerts and little parts of the area. So as the town continues to grow, it's great to see those amenities, because usually we would be leaving and going to spend our money in other places, and now we're staying here. And so as our town continues to grow, good things happen and good things are being brought here. And so I'm appreciative of that, because you don't have to necessarily go to Napa anymore. You can maybe go to Sassoon, or things are just, the region is starting to really take life, and it's nice to see. On a personal note, a young man I used to coach, I've known him for most of his life. He had a concussion during his spring football game, and it was his senior year. He came back, did all the right things, and unfortunately had another one. And so he had to make a very difficult decision to not continue playing football for his senior year. And so I just wanted to acknowledge him. He knows who he is. I'm not going to say his name. I don't draw any more attention to it, but I've known him for most of his life. I'm thinking about him. I sent him a message, but it just goes to remind us, life's not promised, or what we worry about today may not be what we worry about tomorrow. And so your peer view can change very quickly. And so, but I just wanted to make sure I acknowledged him, because I know that was a difficult position to him as a young man to have to decide, I'm thinking about my future. He's 22 years old, going into his senior year, and he had to make a very difficult decision, probably a smart one, but you could imagine the push and pull he was getting on both sides. Finish out my year, maybe elevate, or think long-term health. So just wanted to acknowledge him. He knows who he is. That's all I got.
Yes, I guess my question is going to be, Director Morris, what are our opportunities in regards to these? I have heartburn tonight with watching our single-family home stock be pulled out of production and go into rental, which then only exacerbates our pricing and our availability. But market circumstances, we're probably going to see more home builders dump lots. What do we have at our option? What education do we get on this? I like the product. The housing for all fits in. There's a missing middle. I would love to see it more for seniors only, if it could be restricted as a rental product. I thought we were going to have the opportunity to discuss where we thought these would be best suited in town, but we probably aren't going to get that luxury. So if we see more products like this, are we basically at the same, our hands tied at the same thing? Because almost everything that's approved in Southtown or in Brighton Landing.
So we could present a study session on build for rent. My staff already did a ton of research on it when we got the first application filed. I mean, to answer your questions, this is not an agendized item, obviously, but just broadly, we don't see a lot of opportunity to have discretion over build for rent, because really, if it's a design review, it's a design review. That said, I heard a question earlier about kind of what are the market factors for build for rent? What is the impact on the rental market? We're not economists and we're not real estate developers, my staff and I, but we could certainly put together a study session if there was more than, a couple of you interested in such a study session and bring that back here. And that may give you all a chance to really dive into it and have the discussion I think that it sounds like you want to have.
Sounds like it's not going away. We're going to see more of it. So I guess the better understanding, we all can kind of digest it and then do our own stuff, but would be helpful.
Mind if I?
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would second that. It'd be good to know, like, what are our tools, right? And the options and understanding the concept a little bit more, because my sense of it is that we're all in support of, like you said, different types of housing and the missing middle. I know Amanda had spoken about that earlier, and she gave some really good points about why it's an important, that we support more housing. But the question really that I have is that I know that home ownership is the path toward wealth generation for everyone. I mean, unless you're born on third base, then the way for you to be able to make it is to buy a home. And if you're locked into a rental property, I'm in favor of housing first, but I do want to acknowledge that
it's trending, and it's a mom and pop inventory of single family homes for rent were mom and pop shops or mom and pops, and we knew people in the community. Now it's institutional finance. So what impact does it have on the markets?
And if it's okay with you, like a free for all, I'm gonna open.
Absolutely. Those are my only comments. So yeah.
Commissioner Lightfoot.
So along the same lines, I'm not opposed to the product. I'm not opposed to ADUs or anything like that. I want to make sure that's clear. But what we have now is two different renditions of this product being brought to Vacaville. And I'd like to see us be proactive in maybe developing some design. We might not be able to call them standards, but renderings of what it is that we would like to see for this product in the case that is brought to us in the future, so that we have some guidance that we can provide to developers that we've seen this style multiple times now, because I like you said, I assume that we're going to see more, but maybe some design guidelines of what it is that the community feels is acceptable for the product, and take into consideration the future of HOAs being involved. How do we do maybe some landscape design, and how we get these more developed towards looking like a single family home, and those type of standards. Am I making sense?
So it blends in.
Blends in, but at least getting a sense of this is what the community is okay with, they deem acceptable, and have a model that we can try and persuade developers or future developers to go after what the community feels is, good for our neighborhoods. That make sense?
We can bring you a discussion, but I feel like it's like I'm sort of spoiling the fun that we might have as a group. I have to remind us all, and all of you as planning commissioners, and of course the council sets the policy for our city, that we are not able to apply any kind of subjective standards on new development. And that's part of why, although I understand it's frustrating for members of the public, me and my staff, we have to focus on the black and white that's in our code. And so, but there's still, I've found in my career, when elected or appointed officials that are passionate about topics become educated on those topics, understand their parameters, they can still have a good discussion, and they can still talk about community preferences and have that conversation. And that is informative. It's informative to the public that gets to see the conversation. It's informative to the development community. So I would not discourage you from, if enough of you want it, I'll bring you a study session on this, and then you'll be able to have that conversation in a public forum.
Yeah, no, a great discussion today. Thank you, staff and public comment and developers. I do think at times, and to your point, Director Morris, we do lose sight of what's in front of us and what's in our purview. have a duty and a responsibility, yes, to the public and our citizens, but also to the city of Vacaville as well. So I just want us to keep that in mind as we, at times, love the discussion, but I think at some point we need to understand that even though it's a hardship, this is kind of the parameters of what we can do as a planning. So with that said, I did want to add a little plug-in, and Commissioner Wilkerson and I were talking about this, and I think there's going to be some complaints from citizens specific to what's going on in Centennial Park, soccer fields, baseball fields, some parking issues that, to me, even for my son who plays soccer and plays baseball at Centennial, it's getting dicey. And I've had several parents come up to me, even at the soccer field on Saturday, that the parking is such a hazardous place. Someone's going to get hit, right?
Speaking of things not in our jurisdiction.
Yes, and it's a public comment.
It's a perfect
but
segue.
We're not voting on this. So I just want to put that plug in because, again, Commissioner Wilkerson and I did have a discussion on that, and I think at some point maybe it's Parks and Rec that it goes to, because it was a Parks and Rec individual who actually that spoke to Commissioner Wilkerson. And also a plug in for a friend of mine, Coach Bubba Harville and Sammy Lopez. They do what's called Sandlot Sundays at Arlington Park on Sunday morning. It's free, baseball clinic. If you want to bring your kids out, it's great. I don't know if you've seen some of the baseball clinics that are offered in Vacaville or outside of Vacaville, or even travel clubs. Very, very expensive. So this is an alternative to that if you want your kid to learn baseball. Nice. Yeah, sure.
Are you there in a tie?
I am not there in a tie. Although I have gone there in a tie.
I know you have.
How did you know that? Anyways, thank you.
Watchers.
Okay, I just want to say thank you for the reports and all the staff. I know you guys were down 2 staff. Sad to see them go.
Make mine quick. I attended, as Chair Klein said, I attended the meeting with Menard, and I'll tread lightly, but I just wanted to say that it was great to see how many people came out to that meeting. So, and it was done very well. So that's all.
Before I adjourn, I would be remiss if I didn't say just publicly happy birthday to Vice Chair Rudine, finally out of her 20s.
Do not give her age, buddy, if you know.
I mean, I think she might be 29 and 30. She's been planning since she was a 9-year-old. Happy birthday to you.
Just to see how much I've blushed.
It's also my daughter's birthday.
Oh, and we have a little Lightfoot birthday too. What's her name? Layla. Happy birthday to Layla. I'm sure she's watching. Happy birthday, my nephew. It's my nephew's birthday as well. Josiah. It's his birthday today. Anyway, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Trail mix, this is new.